Hi, I'm Melissa Johns.
Hi, I'm Caitlin Tomaselli.
And it's our pleasure to welcome you to Indigenous Digital Development Day, or DDD.
DDD is a jam-packed day of online programming to take your creativity and career to the next level.
As a continuation of our annual festival industry days, Indigenous Digital Development Day demonstrates our commitment to fostering talent and training for Indigenous filmmakers and digital artists at all levels in their careers.
Many thanks to Ontario Creates, RBC, and East Side Games for their support in making this day possible. Enjoy the event!
Enjoy the event!
So finally, we have this table called Indigenous, International Indigenous. Indigenous-led media labs are growing all over around the world. This panel invited academics who are leading creative tech spaces and offering opportunity to connect with one another. Today, we'll be exploring discussions around growing presence of Indigenous thought and worldviews in media and technology from international perspectives. I'm so happy to be here with and sharing space with Jason, Heather, Julie, Johnson, and Loretta. Thank you to Ontario Creates and Eastside Games for making this day possible. And thank you for coming. We're really happy. My name is Niki Little, Wapshki-Mangan, and I'm the Artistic Director at imagineNATIVE. So just to start off, we're gonna do a round of introductions. And everyone, if you could introduce yourself, your practice, your nation, and then also the world that you're representing in terms of labs and within academic spaces. So I'm gonna call on Heather.
Oh, okay. Dr. Heather Igloliorte Vunga. Good evening, everyone. I'm Dr. Heather Igloliorte. I am an Inuk from Nunatsiavut, but right now I'm on Treaty 1 territory, in the home of the Métis Nation in Winnipeg. I'm here opening the new Inuit Art Center, which is a part of the Winnipeg Art Gallery, and I'm finishing my sabbatical. I apologize in advance if my dogs bark at me. It snowed here today and they haven't been outside, and they're a little bit antsy because it's so late in the evening. Yeah, okay. Like on cue. I am a Concordia University Research Chair in Circumpolar Indigenous Arts. I am the Special Advisor to the Provost on Advancing Indigenous Knowledges. And with Jason Lewis, I am the former co-director of the Milieu Institute, or maybe the sort of transitioning co-director of the Milieu Vienna. The Milieu Institute for Culture, Language, Culture, Art, Technology. We co-direct the Indigenous Futures Cluster, but that is transitioning, and I'm sure Jason will tell you about it, to the Indigenous Futures Research Center. Now I'm going to mute my camera for a moment.
It seems natural to go to Jason next. So Jason, if you would like to go next.
Aloha kako, nice to see everybody. Thank you for having me today. And Niki, you and your crew put on a really great digital development day today. I was very impressed. I didn't go to everything, but I went to a number of things and went really well, and really rich set of conversations. So props to you guys. So I am also a professor at Concordia University, a colleague of Heather's. I teach in design and computation arts. And I am also University Research Chair in computational media in the Indigenous Future Imaginary. And I'm the special advisor on Indigenous spaces and money, really, what it comes down to. And yes, Heather and I and a group of our colleagues at Concordia just got approved this last spring, the establishment of an official university research center called the Indigenous Futures Research Center. So as we talk further, we can get more into the details of that. So, and I am Hawaiian and Samoan.
Thank you for joining us. And how about you, Loretta?
Oh, well, I actually don't live in...
Oh, you turn yourself off.
Hi, I don't live in the bush, but I live far enough from Vancouver that there was a bear outside at 4:30 this morning, breaking into my neighbor's garage. So I'm thinking, where's the thunder? There was thunder, and I thought, oh, but it's not thunder, and our dog didn't bark, so I thought this can't be a bear. So it was this kind of mystery all night, and then confirmation this morning was a bear breaking into his garage. So anyway, so I'm a little tired because I actually didn't. Usual filmmakers don't get to sleep till about 3 in the morning, anyways. So Loretta Todd. My family is from St. Paul de Métis and Whitefish First Nations in Alberta, and our family also traces to the original Métis in Red River, as well as family from the Turtle Mountain in Dakotas, the Chippewa. I'm very honored to be included in this very stellar group of people who have been doing this work much longer than I have. So it's a great privilege to be here. And also a big shout out to imagineNATIVE to continue to support digital technology in our practice as artists. I'm also very grateful to imagineNATIVE for including Monkey Beach in the program, and we'll be screening tomorrow. And I also have to just sort of a little shout out from Monkey Beach because we were lucky to go to the industry selects at TIFF and then open the Vancouver Film Festival. And now we're actually in Cineplex. It's like, oh my God. So we'll be screening not in Ontario and not in Quebec, but we'll be screening we started in Vancouver, we're screening the rest of BC starting this week. And then the following week, we'll be screening in the rest of Canada that is open, but all COVID safe and all, very strict COVID protocols. So I hope you get out to see it. And if not, please, you can buy a day pass through imagineNATIVE to be able to screen it and all the other amazing films that are showing. And I'm also very privileged and honored to be included in that. I'm primarily a filmmaker, as you probably figured out. And I also produce children's series such as Coyote's Crazy Smart Science Show. And then I also am the creative director of the IM4 Lab, which is what I created and set up myself as an inclusive place in Vancouver. We're attached to the Emily Carr University School of Art and Design, although we're not under their auspices. We're just sort of partnered with them in their space and sort of being able to have a good relationship with them. And it was primarily to create an ecosystem of Indigenous artists and media professionals and community people and language people who want to learn about immersive technology so they can apply it in their work. And so that we could start influencing what is supposed to be a fairly considerable VR immersive XR community out here in Vancouver that kind of seems to grow and then seems to plateau from time to time. But we're nonetheless determined to influence that first, of course, within this sort of industrial section here in Vancouver, but more importantly, to bring the technologies to our communities through training, through production, and through advocacy. And a number of workshops and seminars, and many, such as Jason, we're very fortunate to, be included in some of the workshops and that we've been doing over time. I think I can get into more detail as we go through.
Thank you for that introduction. And yeah, tomorrow we have your talk at 2 o'clock. So tune in on a platform. Let's go to Johnson next.
Kia ora koutou, ngā mihi o te rā. Ko te mahi tuatahi, e mihi atu ana ki a koe Niki. Just want to acknowledge you and the amazing work you've done with imagineNATIVE this year, and thank you for inviting me to be part of this. Ko waio, who am I? Ko Johnson Witehira toku ingoa. Johnson Witehira is my name. I am a Māori artist, designer, academic, based here in Aotearoa, New Zealand. Ki te tātuku māma, no Wanganui, no Tamahaki, no Ngāti Hinukura. So on my mother's side, my tribal affiliations are Ngāti Hinukura and Tamahaki. And ki te tātuku pāpa, on my father's side, my tribal affiliations are Ngāpuhi and Ngaitu Te Oru. Here in Aotearoa, I'm a co-founder and director of IDEA, which is short for Indigenous Design and Innovation Aotearoa. IDEA is a lot easier to remember and to say. And I founded IDEA with a couple of other really smart people here about 3 years ago. And that was for us to basically focus on decolonizing design in New Zealand. wherever we could. But for the most part, a lot of that work has been through and with government, which we think is useful because it's at the highest levels, we can be working, and that's to decolonize things like the education system, the justice system, and so on, and working with people in health as well. So it's a really privileged space for us to be. Soon after starting IDEA, we realized there weren't enough Māori designers. We want to hire as many as we can and support as many as we can, and we just can't find any. There are some slowly coming through tertiary institutions. So because of that gap, about 2 years ago, we started Pōpō, which is Wellington City's only and first Indigenous co-working space / we call it Indigenous Design Accelerator. Basically, we need more Māori designers and Indigenous designers, so we built a space for them. And we really wanted a space for us to be able to jam with other Māori, to have fun, to bring some youth in. So in the last year alone, we've supported and paid 12 interns to come through. We've recently, through picking up larger projects, we've been able to pay 2 of those to be full-time. And in the short period of time that we've run IDEA, we've been able to collaborate on the Amazing Space Between Us project and help me on board bit. But we're running a project with working with New York University, who are engaged with the Smithsonian and other museums and institutions in the GLAM sector across America, helping them to develop biocultural labels, a system to connect what's in their archives to the native peoples of the lands, but also to give those people of the lands control over how their, we would say taonga, how their treasures are cared for and how they're shared and how they're protected and how they're looked after. So kia ora tātou again, it's really nice to be on here. I could talk all day, as you guys know, about all the projects I'm working on. But yeah, I guess I'll pass it over to Julie.
Thanks, Johnson. I was just like, sure, put me behind the most fluent speaker. I am coming from you live of Treaty 1 territory in the homeland, the heartland of the Métis Nation. And, I like to say we're the heart of Turtle Island. And so I'm really happy to be here. I want to also give a shout out to the incredible imagineNATIVE team. And, I'm always slightly just like feeling a little bit lesser because, these guys have all the language and it's so great to just sit there and listen to. Not that I'm going to attempt to pronounce anything. I feel really privileged. I've been in different projects with all of the folks above or on the little boxes as we sit here. I'm a Canada Research Chair in Indigenous Art, Digital Media, and Collaboration. We're building, we actually just are starting the construction for Aboriginal, a new media lab and a collaborative research center. It's 4,000 square feet here in Winnipeg, and we're really, or should I say Winnipeg? And so, we're we're really excited to get that all rolling, and also excited. I am co-leading Indigenous delegation to go to MIT, which all of the 3 on the lower part of my screen are involved, which includes Heather, Jason, and Loretta. Sorry, Johnson, it was just Canadian focused. And so the next one's international. Don't worry, next one's international. And so excited to do that. And then also co-leading an Indigenous digital media think tank with Jason next month at the Banff Center, where we're gonna start to culminate and think a little bit about a digital strategy and residency for the Banff Center. And I guess the really fun part is leading a large partnership grant, which we've started, I guess, about 1.5 years ago. And it's about looking at maker spaces and digital media labs that are very either rooted in Indigenous epistemologies and methodologies, or working from that trajectory of collaboration and thinking through how they want to do their work as Indigenous leaders, as Indigenous designers, or as Indigenous scholars and makers. So, I'm really excited to be here. Chimegwich, Marcy, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you everyone for being here. It's I love everyone on this panel. It's so great. I just enjoy hearing you speak. And actually, Julie, you kind of led me into the first question. And I was wondering if people could speak to how you ground Indigenous epistemologies or cultural epistemologies into the framework of your maker spaces or labs. Because I know, actually, maybe if Heather, if you want to start, just because I know you do circumpolar, so there's quite a few different, I can imagine, nuances that you are dealing with.
So I'm in a leadership position along with Johnson and Julie. I feel like let's just tic-tac-toe between all the squares on the board. But I'm the circumpolar lead of the Space Between Us project, and in my research chair, and also my own current partnership grant, Inuit Kayimi and Kangate is a really important part of the way that we move forward. That's a philosophy that comes from, it was formally embedded into the foundation of Nunavut in 1999 when they ratified their land claims agreement. And so it's terminology that is sort of Nunavut centric, but it has 8 principles that that you can find throughout the circumpolar world. I can't speak for Sami, of course, but for Inuit, the principles like leading by serving, supporting and fostering that in young people, having being a steward for the environment, feeling a responsibility to care for and be on the land. All of these kind of aspects of that philosophy are, and how to be a leader, and how to sort of govern organizations and just make decisions by consensus. These are things that I think can be found in a lot of Indigenous philosophies, because when you've survived for millennia, the community is the most important thing. And so, protecting the land and the water and the animals and the plants that sustain you and sustain each other, and having good foundations for relationships and being in relation. I think that we will find that these are things that in a variety of ways come out in many, many philosophies. And it's certainly the way that we have tried to carry that forward into the way that we work with, particularly with Indigenous students, all of our students, but especially in the way that we foster and try to support and provide really good tools and ongoing collaboration and mentorship, and bringing students into projects in a way that they feel like they're not just doing data entry or like doing the sort of menial things, but actually learning skills that will make them leaders. The Inuit Futures Project has all of this built into it, but also I think Jason and our lab, and Jason can talk a little bit about what he does with his amazing cohort after cohort of Indigenous students. But we try to foster a kind of a ethos where everyone feels welcome, and that they are part of something that they are building towards, that they have shared ownership in the projects, and that they are developing skills and knowledge that are going to make them also become leaders who can also help other people. And it's like, I think if we can foster a generation of people who have confidence and competency and care for each other, then they bring that forward into all their other work. And so it's, for me, it's like, the sort of my half of the Milieu Lab and Jason's half of the Milieu Lab are doing very different kind of projects when you look at what the students are working on, but the vibe, I think I can say, that we try to generate, and that with the sense of community and the networkedness among our students, I think that's something that it's hard to really define how it works, but I think it comes from the people who are in leadership positions, which also includes students and our administrators and everyone kind of pulling in the same direction. Jason can, we have a shared times that we have a place where we're creating a sense of community that makes lots of people feel welcome. Again, I feel like every time I talk, I'm going to set up Jason to talk as well. But I don't know, Jason, if you want to add to. Oh, you're muted.
You're muted.
I'm saying you can go. We can go to somebody else, and I can come back to my.
Yeah. Okay.
I can jump in there.
No. Oh.
Okay, it's good. You can hear me. Sorry. I think I turned the mute on and off about 3 times then. But yeah, I thought I'd jump in and talk about a pawpaw, in our Indigenous co-working space. We very deliberately set out some tikanya, or some kind of, I guess, Māori protocols around engagement as part of how we ground people in the space. And it's not Māori exclusive or Indigenous exclusive, but the rules are. And so anyone who comes in, whether they're Māori or not, we let them know what the rules are. And some of them are really basic things, like one of us is e mihi ki te tangata, so it means acknowledging anyone who comes in the space. Normal co-working space, people just walk in and sit down and do their thing. But in ours, if you walk past someone, you can't not say hello. You can't acknowledge them basically and say hi to them. So we've got little rules like that. We've got little rules like treating it like your own whare. You know, so it doesn't matter if you're of the executive leadership team of whoever. If you're in our house, you go and put your dishes in the dishwasher. No one's going to pick them up for you, you know, and do it for you. And we talk to people about that as well. In fact, me and my other partners, we vacuum the studio when we need to. There's something busy happening and it's like we're running around the vacuum, and when we tell people that, they think we're kind of joking. We're like, no, we actually vacuumed before you got here, because, you know, we do that stuff as well. So really thinking about, I guess, as a family space. Another thing I guess we do is we make sure acknowledge from a Māori perspective the mana of the people who come into the organization, or the esteem, or, you know, if you've got someone who's really well known, if it's a minister, we've had ministers of parliament come through, we've had Sir so-and-so, whatever, come through, but we make sure if they are, that people in the house know they're coming in, again, so we can welcome them in appropriate ways. And then we do other things like we, depending on who's in there, we've learnt songs to sing amongst ourselves to acknowledge those people who are in there. And the one other thing I thought I would mention, which is really important for us working with youth, is we put our rangatahi, our youth, we put them at the front of all the biggest projects. And that often really surprises some of government when we've got 21-year-olds, 22-year-olds in these meetings, and it's normally just people in suits. And the reason we do that, you know, there's obviously a reason to accelerate them. The best way to make chiefs is to get the chiefs in the biggest meetings and at the front. But the other thing is, you know, if we look back at our history, there's lots of documented examples where white chiefs were having meetings with Māori chiefs, and the Māori chiefs would have their young children there, and they'd be encouraged to ask questions. And these the white chiefs would be, what are these kids doing here? Right? They're not meant to be here. And the rangatira, our chiefs, would say, no, this one's the next chief. So they come to the meeting too, and they ask questions, and they're part of it. So that's something that we try and do. We don't use the word interns, but we put our youngest people at the front of these biggest meetings. And there's lots of other things we do, but I think those are some of the kind of more special things we do.
Loretta, you were speaking to a couple of generational collaborations or exchanges. I'm wondering if you could speak to some of that as well.
Well, we spoke last year at imagineNATIVE, part of the Digital Day, but I don't know if everyone who was there are here. So I'm going to kind of just do a little backup on IM4, just in terms of how it was envisioned. So it was envisioned basically based on some principles of reciprocity, respect, and redistribution of wealth. So this idea of inclusiveness. So, you know, my privilege and other people's privilege is, you know, used to extend to the community and people who would otherwise not have access to the kind of spaces that I might be able to go occupy, even if I have to occupy them with great difficulty and you know, a lot of challenges. So the idea is that, you know, IM4 Lab was, you know, an inclusive place. And also it was a sovereign place, so that even though we are part of MLKR, we are still sovereign in terms of our own governance. And that governance is also very particular to the IM4 Lab, because I look at it as sort of matriarch-led. So for me, matriarchs were part of the process of protecting the elders and the children, so that transmission of knowledge and culture could be kept safe. And so I see that, you know, matriarchs were part of the risk taking that was necessary to keep that safe space. So part of the governance structure is matriarchs, who are part of where everything is kind of run by and you know, looked at and sort of discussed in terms of how does it serve the IM4 and how does it serve the community and people that we're trying to reach. And those are made up of Dewey Manuel, who also is the head of the BOSA Center, the first Indigenous woman who's running a film center, I think, in Canada. Tracy Bono, who is at the Nowickan Center, and Steve Weiss. And each of them sort of represent territories not completely adjacent to Vancouver and the territory we're in right now, which is, you know, Squamish, Musqueam, and Tsleil-Waututh, but certainly, you know, BC-based matriarchs who come from the territories around here, and of course, these from Squamish. So those were kind of embedded in the very beginning of the project. That was really important for me. We also had advice from Amethyst First Writer, just partly because of all the work that she and Dr. Leroy Littlebear have done over the years, with inspiring all of us really to be thinking about, how we indigenize these technologies with these spaces. And she continues on in sort of an advisory way. But so having said that, on the kind of day-to-day basis, or when we actually when pre-COVID, it was learning to us was like a way of nurturing not just the mind, but also the soul and the body. So it was always really important that when people came into our space that they were like feasts. So every workshop is treated like a feast, and people are always amazed at how good the food is, and how welcome they are, and the kind of speed at which we go, because often many of the people who are coming into our space, because it's so inclusive, and it can be teenagers or it can be grandmothers, as I've said before. So not everybody has had that kind of hands-on experience with Unity, and that feeling of feasting slows the space, the place down. Sometimes people feel like, oh, we cover a lot of information in a very short amount of time. But the idea that, but you don't have to know it all now. You can come back later. You're part of the family, and you're always welcome here. And so that's why we've designed so that there's always sort of a laddering. So you can come in introductory, and then you can go into the next level, and you can kind of specialize what you feel the most could comfort that. So we did that a lot, and I think that made a difference. I think it did kind of create a space where people felt welcome, and we started to see more and more people coming to our workshops, and the word got around, and you feed our people well, then people are going to show up. The other thing is, since COVID, of course, we had to adapt that. And how do we adapt that? How do we create that same sort of feasting environment, that sense of nurturing and, you're welcome? And so we tried to do that. And some of you may have seen some of the work, the videos we did. We took our webinars online, and we did, we invited usually young Indigenous artists from Tsleil-Waututh, Squamish, or Musqueam to do the land acknowledgements. And so giving them visibility and space, and also acknowledging them as you said, Johnson, as the future leaders, but also including lots of DJs. So we always, after that, we went into a DJ thing. So we were kind of preparing you for, to kind of unwind your mind, get into the beat. So they're always trying to, whatever space we do, we're always trying to create some kind of, that sense of, how we would take care of you if you came into our home.
Yeah, that care is so important. And Julie, you're in the middle of creating actually a new physical space. I was wondering if you could speak to like the transition from where you were and then now into moving into a physical space with all these elements.
I know, I was just like sitting there mesmerized listening to Loretta go like, oh yeah, I like that idea. I like the idea of like how you host. And I think some of the things that we, that's it's kind of a beautiful thing of thinking about that as the core kind of ontology or methodology of way of working. And so, some of the things that are important to me are about building relationships, collaboration, learning by doing, land-based knowledge, listening to each other, reciprocity, which is always a word I struggle with, creative interventions, and thinking through those. And then how do you put those ideas into practice? And how do you start to embody the things that you just do naturally, or then how do you teach upcoming generations of how to take those qualities on? Or, as a mid-generation person, it's like, how do you learn from emerging folks and then elders and established people? And so I'd say that we've been really lucky in terms of the lab. I've got to work with Woven Collaborative. So it's like, it's Indigenous led. So it's myself and another Canada Research Chair, Dr. Jamie Cedro, who works in health and midwifery. And so we teamed up together to create a kind of larger research collaboration. And it's called Kindadish, and it means she who holds the lodge. And so a big part of that space was about making sure that we could have kids in that space. Women could be breastfeeding. We could have elders, like nice, comfy stuff for them to sit in, as opposed to like the academic kind of stale space. Like not lazy boys, but kind of somewhere like that. And so I think, Destiny and May have been incredible, and they work together as Woven Collaborative. And so they're two Indigenous designers and architects who have helped kind of shape that space. And we've been working really closely on it. And so I think that what's exciting is that, it's Indigenous led, Indigenous driven, and Indigenous designed. And so I'm really excited to see how it's coming conceptually. And I can, I've been sitting on all these crappy meetings with the university and like the entire team of like people when you're doing a capital project, and they're like, sorry, what are you doing? You're buying vintage chairs and recovering them? Like, could you just like explain that to us? Or, you're going to have custom wood built, recycled wood in there and plants. And they're just like, you can just see like that blow up head emoji happening like in the meeting. And the good news is I think I scare them a bit. So they've stopped asking too many really awkward questions. But I just feel like the exciting part about where we're at and listening to all of the other speakers who are actually in their labs doing the work that they do, thinking about how it looks or how it feels conceptually, and is that going to translate once we actually build the physical space? It's an exciting time for Winnipeg. I think there's lots of things that are happening for us. We have one of the largest Indigenous populations in Canada. And so we've got all these incredible things going for us, and we just need more opportunity and space to kind of do that. And I'm hoping that the collaborative space and the digital media lab will do that for people. And so it's just been exciting to talk to some young makers or emerging makers and hear them get excited about like, this is going to be in Winnipeg. Like they're just, their minds are exploding a bit because they're just excited by it. And so, a couple of people are like, oh, I thought I'd have to go to grad school here, or I thought I would have to start my undergrad here. And so I think that it will be exciting to see what comes out. And it's still so early that, obviously I'm optimistic, but I also just think that we've got a real opportunity. And I think that partly even this conversation that we're having tonight, it's about building those collaborations and networks so that we can work together and share students and build that capacity. And I think it's something that, I've done already a lot with the people on our talk right now. And I think that it's really important to get out of this kind of insular, kind of Western individualism kind of thinking, and think about how do we grow a youth or a student? How do we give them the tools? How do we set them up? How do we expose them to as many incredible makers, philosophers, scholars, incredible people that are out there, and give them the kind of growth and trajectory that we all wanted, but didn't necessarily get. And I think that that's really important to me. And I'm excited to kind of do those cross collaborations within Canada and more broadly with the circumpolar and the Pacific. And I think that it's just such an incredible opportunity. We've had students already go over to Aotearoa. They lost their minds. They loved it so much. They ended up staying for 4 extra months. And so, I think that there's just such a rich, incredible exchange that can happen. And the best results is kind of like sitting back, waiting to see what happens. And so I'm excited to see where that goes.
Thank you. That's so great. I guess like maybe thinking about the water and the connectivity, I was wondering if Jason, if you could speak to some of the collaborations that you've worked on. And I know, Hawaii, like you've done a lot of work there and sort of thinking more internationally, I guess, beyond borders.
So yeah, I'm happy to talk about that. I do want to talk a little bit about sort of that initial question, which I think is a really great question, right? Is sort of how do we structure the labs in the way, in different ways so that they promote Indigenous well-being and Indigenous knowledge production. I think, we started, Skawanati started in 1996 with Cyber Powwow. I joined her in 1999, from those very beginning days, some of the things that people already mentioned were really central, the gathering. So even though these things were happening online, there was always an emphasis on having physical gathering places in different, friendship centers and artist-run centers and so forth. Partially because at that time, right, not many members of our community had access to the technology, right, to have a computer, to get online and to do it. they needed people to show them, what they could do and how to like actually navigate the space. And also it was a community moment. It was a moment to bring everybody together, to feast, to share food together, and to build, to show that this wasn't about just that exhibition or just about this research project, but it was about community building. And I think that's been one of the primary things for our lab, for Aboriginal territories in cyberspace, which is this real emphasis even within the academy that like, we're here, when we come and do a workshop with you, right, we're not just kind of dropping in to like do the workshop and learn what we learn and get out, right? We're actually here to build relationships with you and your community and your family. And that's been one of the great things is we have, relationships that are span 20 years at this point because of that sort of work. And also this idea of like Indigenous determined and Indigenous led. So those have been our two touchstones, because also, particularly for the first 10 years, most of the students we worked with were non-Indigenous, right? So it was me and Skawanati, and then we would bring in like guest instructors who were Indigenous, but the core instruction team were non-Indigenous. So we had to think a lot about how do you go about creating an environment that prioritizes Indigenous ways of doing things, but also makes it possible for them to participate in a way that is good for them, but also obviously good for us and the communities that we're working for. So we always come back to this idea of like, if it's Indigenous determined, meaning that the people who are defining what the goals and objectives are Indigenous, and then the people who are actually leading the execution towards that are Indigenous. You can work with all kinds of people, right? We're in a position now where over half the lab is Indigenous, and it's amazing, right? And it's changed things, and it's changed things in good ways. And then there's some ways where it's changed it in interesting ways that I wasn't quite expecting. So I think it's something to always, kind of think about. The other big thing is thinking about continuity, right? So again, this is an artifact of when we started 20 some odd years ago, which is, there was this rhetoric of you couldn't really be Indigenous and then like be like, super technical or super digital, right? So very early on, we developed this rhetoric of continuity, right? Of saying, look, this is all a continuum, right? So this is reaching way back to your ancestors, and this is looking forward to your 7th generation. And it's all one long conversation, right? Between yourself, your communities, and your community with the outside world. And it's just a question of how you want to engage with that conversation. You may want to do it by doing beadwork. You may want to do it by becoming an oral storyteller, but you may want to do it by creating video games, right? Or becoming a programmer, right? Or something like that. They're all part of the conversation, and you kind of have to, figure out where you are in that conversation, but you're not excluded from that conversation, right? Because you want to engage with your culture in these modes. And then the other thing was capacity building. So always this focus on capacity building. So how does the work that we're doing in the lab help build, like I think Heather was saying, I think everybody said it, like, how does it go towards building, and Johnson, the next generation of leaders, right? And now, I'm in my 50s now, and now I'm like, oh, thank God we did that, because I can like start to slow down a little bit, right? There's like these amazing generations of younger people who are coming up now. We've had people who started as high schoolers in one of our workshops, and then they came to Concordia to study, in fine arts, in my department or somewhere else. Then they came to work as research assistants with us, and now they're teaching the workshops, right? So thinking about how to create those long-term capacity building relationships so that you can really help them out, because they, we all need a lot of help. We all needed a lot of help to get where we're at now, and they need a lot of help, and it needs to be continuous and persistent, because our experience is talking to them is a lot of the help that they've gotten before is not persistent and consistent, right? It kind of comes in like bursts and then like leaves, and they're kind of left trying to figure out how to take the next step. And so we really try to create an environment for that. And then I just want to say one thing, which is more academic oriented, which is about, creating these Indigenous spaces. So I've been teaching a graduate seminar for the last couple of years called The Future Imaginary. And one of the things that I negotiated basically my way into doing is basically saying, look, we have these problems in institutions where we have our Indigenous students are so often educating the other students or the instructors, right? And so they're super frustrated because one, the big thing is they're like, I came here to learn, right? I didn't come here to teach them what they should already know. And so I'm wasting 30-40% of my time teaching instead of learning, right? And then there's, the other problems that we know about where people say really stupid, ignorant, or just straight out racist things. And so, I use the history of that at our institution, to argue for a prerequisite for this graduate course, where essentially anybody who wants to join it has to write me 250 words about how they have an existing engagement with Indigenous communities, right? So, and it's been amazing. We've had, so 75% of the students are Indigenous, and then the other 25 non-Indigenous percent, they're like totally engaged, and they're able to have that high level conversation, right? Instead of getting bogged down in this Indigenous 101, right? So one of the things that really excites me about seeing the various labs, coming up over the last 4 or 5 years, is, knowing that these are going to be spaces where our young people can come into and they can have really advanced conversations within an Indigenous context, right? Where they don't have to be defensive. They don't have to educate other people, right? That the things that they don't know are okay, because we're here as a community to help them learn those things. So, and one last thing, I just want to make a note because Loretta said, all of us who've been doing this longer than her, but the fact of the matter is Loretta published an essay in 1994 called Aboriginal Territory or Aboriginal Narratives in Cyberspace that saw all of this, right? That was able to look into the future and see the sorts of questions that we were going to be wrestling with as Indigenous people as we moved into these spaces. And thank you for that, Loretta.
Amazing. I love those nuggets of history and our history. And I look forward to all of the conversations where, this is one of the reasons why I appreciate imagineNATIVE so much, is that the context, dissolves. We can actually just talk about whether it's theory, whether it's aesthetics, or the stories, and get to the really good juicy parts of it and have really high conversations around that. High conversations. Wow.
Well, I would like to I know you guys work more directly in academic settings, like within the universities, with grant, degree granting programs. We don't. And in fact, we're in a university that doesn't really have computer science teaching either, although there are artists who do CAM program. And there are labs within the university that also can do that. So we do bring everybody in, and we kind of combination of Indigenous, people of color, and non-Indigenous into our spaces in terms of instruction. But we're very careful about who we bring in and how they can work very collaboratively and very gently, if you like. But one of the things I do want to kind of just, speak to, because we do all these workshops. We've done probably, I was Colin, who's the production, the project, I can't remember. Sorry, Colin Van Loon. He's the guy kind of makes everything happen every day, along with Alana Vandam and Shawana, who are both amazing. But in any case, he just told me I'm supposed to say, one, we have a Titan camera, but also to remind people of how many people we've probably given workshops to, which is, I don't know, I think it's about 200 now in a couple years, which I think is pretty good. But one of the things I think is kind of critical is to, and thus the emphasis on matriarchs, is that, many of us, I haven't been doing what you've been doing, working sort of exclusively in tech. I've been mostly doing, film and television. But one of the things is that, is to give those media professionals those tools, people who are already working in that field, but also to see everybody within the circle. So there isn't that kind of generational kind of before or after kind of thing. And I say that because I remember giving a workshop teaching once when I used to teach film. And I remember one of the students was in his 60s, and he used to have a rock band, and his rock band used to do, had their old Super 8 camera or whatever, and they used to do their own music videos. And so, he's a future leader too. I mean, there's, and the matriarchs, we just actually did a project called Mentoring for Matriarchs with people who are engaged both as media professionals, but also who have a particular kind of role in their community. And in case of Tracy Bono, she's part of an active group that's out to protect the Huckleberry territories. in their territory. And so to her, using AR and immersive and other technologies is a way of being able to exercise both sovereignty within that digital space, but also to use those things because of, in a way, her responsibility, as part of a group of matriarchs within her own community to protect those huckleberry territories. So I think that's something that, we don't have the reach that you guys have because our budget's quite small, to be honest. But nonetheless, I think we all kind of parallel and certainly enhance and mirror, and we're all kind of moving in the same beautiful way. But I just wanted to kind of say that we're working, because we don't work within that kind of sort of academic thing, for better or worse. It's it's caused us some trouble. Certainly we would like more programmers, and we're finding new ways to do that. We're reaching out and we're developing relationships to be able to enable that to happen. But nonetheless, we feel pretty good about being able to. I was going to say we're the small wapato, which is the local potato out here, the traditional potato. So in a way we are, but we're also, I'm still honored to be here, and we look forward to continuing to have dialogue and conversations and whatever kind of collaborations. And we've been reaching out to our Māori relatives as well, and look forward to taking that the next step as well. So just wanted to put that out there.
Definitely, I appreciate it. We have a question actually from Archer. Some of you may know him. Where do we want to be in 20 years, 50 years, 100 years? I think this is, unfortunately, our time is, I want to be here for a long time, but unfortunately time is coming to an end. So I feel like Archer's question is a great one to leave us with.
I'll say one thing. The one thing for me would be, we want to be making our own tools. Using our own tools and making our own tools, from gardening tools to the software. I think that's the ultimate path of determination for us, and for us to detach ourselves from our reliance on these Western tools, which are useful for us for now. But I think being able to build a lot of those tools, that'd be the one place I'd hope to be in 100 years.
I can do 5 years because that's how many years I have left on my grant. And I know where I want to leave things with this Inuit and Nunatsiavut training program is, like right now we have, a handful of curators like myself, but we don't have Inuit conservation staff in museums. We don't have Inuit taking care of the material objects, that are trained in those kind of areas. We have amazing Inuit directors and now producers, but we don't have, for example, Inuit sound designers yet. And so like my beloved colleague, Alethea Arnaquak-Barrel will say, she was doing a film and she needed footsteps on snow, Foley, and they went out in Montreal and did the footsteps on the snow. And she was like, oh no, snow does not sound like Montreal snow when you're in the Arctic. We don't want wet, slushy snow. You need to crack styrofoam or something to get that same effect. So we need, I think in film and video, we want to have Indigenous everything, because we want people to, because it brings knowledge to the program. It's not just for the sake of having more Indigenous bodies in the space. It's because they know things and they see things and they see the world, and they're going to bring that to artistic practices and leadership roles in a different way. So we want we want people in theater who speak language and can teach you how to pronounce the words exactly and what the meaning is behind the term. So for me, in a 5-year period, that might be a little bit lofty, but what I'm hoping is that we have the same kind of cohort. Year 1, we hope to work with 4 Inuit. We worked with 17. We're only at the end of year 2. We've got 4 alumni who already, we have the Inuit Art Quarterly's first full-time editorial staff member. And there is an Inuk who's taken on a full-time director position with Kagiavut, which is a performing arts collective in the Arctic. We've got Inuit who are doing really dynamic things, and it shows that you just need a little support and a network of people, and to know that you're not the only person just because you're the only person in your program or the only person in your community who's doing that, that one thing that you're interested in. But I think with that little bit of support, in 5 years' time, we could see a dramatically different landscape of people who are available. So I'll do the easy one, which is like, in 5 years, I want to see, 100 Inuit in creative positions, because up until now we've had, maybe 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 at a time across the country. And I think we can dramatically change that.
Done. We're going to do it.
I just, I'm totally there with Johnson. That's my focus for the next 100 years, is building our old tools. And just to add to that a little bit, which is, part of the reason why I'm interested in that is I think that, when we have the capabilities to do this tool making, is that we're going to make some like amazing new kinds of tools, right? That aren't being made out of the sort of industrial complex that's making most of our digital tools right now. And that's a big focus of the AI work that I'm doing now, is like, okay, how can we actually take a fundamentally different approach to these technologies and create them in a way that we work with them in the ways that we're used to working with our tools, which is in a relationship with them. And what does that mean, and what does it look like?
You want Loretta or Julie?
I mean, I guess there's 2 parts to that. I mean, in terms of the IM4 lab, certainly we we're in a little different situation in BC, because there is, like I say, this sort of fledgling VR community, a lot of it focused on e-health. There, certainly this kind of movement here toward employing, for instance, more e-health immersive technology, and which would make sense in terms of some many remote Indigenous communities. But if that's not driven by us, then it's just another way to gather data about our bodies. And so I think that's something that we would like to kind of have some intervention in. We have been kind of like making some tentative inroads that way, and other people have reached out to us to that respect. It's just sort of like finding all the time and resources that we need to kind of make that kind of happen. So that's something I think that's sort of been on my mind. I think the other thing is that we would like to see, we do have like our grants kind of like it's staggered and staged, and eventually will run out. So we have to kind of keep developing and seeing what our vision is, and to kind of sort of kind of also concur about this idea of tools. I think more and more as we bring community people in, more and more the community people say, we want tools a little different, because we experience community different. We don't necessarily want this headset. We want a different way of experiencing collectively within this virtual spaces. And I think that's sort of like something that's kind of propelling us right now. Plus, we're also looking, partly because of COVID, because we had to switch everything over, and our level of kind of training was quite significant. It was quite intense. We were doing workshops like all the time. So how do we, continue to keep that momentum going? And so actually, we've been talking about how we can, load some of our workshops onto devices and send them out to remote communities, and then try to build a kind of a cloud space where people can come in and be mentored and kind of have those conversations. But they also need the technology. So it's not just that, okay, here's it's loaded up, but you also need the other technology to be able to do that work. So that's a bit of a challenge, I think, being in this kind of not completely within a university gives us a kind of we do have access to certain funds, but not the kind of other ways. But we are we have some of those bigger plans. As far as that kind of what would you call it, imaginary space of many years from now. I don't know. It's sort of like it's kind of interesting because go back to Jason to that time when he and I first met up at Cybercom and BAMS. All the discussion was about the android, the body, the human becoming basically the machine. So I think that and obviously AI and this kind of movement in which Jason and others have been bringing forward this idea of making kinship with machines. But there's sort of what's the and certainly we're all engaged in that. How can we influence that? How can we influence that machine? What is that machine? Who is that machine? And obviously that machine is animate. Obviously that machine is alive. So that's the kind of conversation I think. But I also think that we need to also to go, and I'm sure I know all the artists do this, and all the people who are on this panel and others do this, is to kind of go back to those stories that talk to, Michael Nikolaiakalanis wrote a book called Haida Manga, and he basically talks about this kind of obsession the main character has with the machine, in this case the killing machine. So and what that does, and how they, in the end, the community has to come, he basically sacrifices himself because he can't get rid of that urge he has within that. So I think part of it is that we also have to kind of participate as a community in that sort of deep healing that we need. It's not that we're lacking, it's not that we're missing anything, it's not that we're broken, but it's just that there is this sort of healing so that we aren't fooled by the machine. And I think that's all I can kind of add at this point.
How about you, Julie? The last, no offense, no.
Hey, I don't care. I was just gonna make a joke. Retired? Like, I was just like, I was like not working crazy amounts of time. That's where I see myself. I don't know if they call me crazy, but like that's maybe the longer trajectory. I know I get teased a lot about it. As an artist, you're always making, and so you don't actually really ever retire. I'd say the biggest thing for me is, after doing a virtual Nuit Blanche, digital literacy. It is like, I can't even like describe the kind of lack of digital literacy that we just have as a society in general, or like the reluctancy for people to want to engage with anything digital. And I think that that was a real learning for me. And even though, I was excited and we did lots of really innovative work, it's just, there's still, even though we're stuck with the digital only in this kind of global pandemic, there's still a reluctancy, and that reluctancy comes out of not knowing. And I think that, the more that people could be engaged or have that kind of information or knowledge, I think is going to be a really exciting space to go to. And, unlike Heather, I just mapped out the last 8 years. So I feel like it's a much more global conversation, and so I'm thinking like, I love that you just like, the next 5 years is this, and I'm like, the next 10 years is this. And so I think that that kind of like global, and that cross conversation and just the continuous collaboration and building with each other, I think is where we're going. I hope that's where I'm going anyways. Hopefully everybody else is going to join in on the big collaboration.
I love that connectivity and that care and all the good things that we've talked about here tonight. And thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate this conversation. I look forward to more to come. Just so everyone knows, imagineNATIVE, we're on till Sunday. You can still get free passes. You can get community passes to video on demand. Loretta's film is tomorrow at 10 a.m. It's being released. We have a talk with her at 2 p.m. The art crawl, which actually Jason is in, starts at 7 tomorrow night, and I'll be taking everyone on a tour. So lots to explore, lots to check out. We have a really great help button. We have really amazing volunteers and online coordinators who are really eager to chat with you and to assist you in any way. So thank you so much, Chimagwich, for everyone to join us tonight. Thanks.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much, Niki. Super appreciate it. This is great.
Hello, Niki.
Congratulations on everything that's been happening.
Thank you. Yeah, it was amazing just to hear what you guys did today in one day. Oh my God, that was just
astounding.
Yeah. And then do this.
Yeah, my parents were like, "We know what you do now." I'm like,
an upside, yes, unexpected upside.
Some of us may never have that.
But connect soon with everybody. It was so good to see your beautiful faces and to hear all the great things that you're doing, and look forward to continuing having conversations. And Julia, thanks for reaching out, and hopefully something soon. And again, Niki, thanks for showing Monkey Beach. It really means a lot. And I hope some of you guys get to see it.
I can't wait. I love it.
It's on the calendar.
Definitely.
Oh, good.
Definitely.
Okay, that's sweet. Well, you know what? It's too bad it's the big screen, it really does wash over you in a different way on the big screen. And the sound that it was, and the music was kind of meant to be in a big theater. But, a lot of people watched it you know, online. Actually, 1,500 watch it online.
Wow.
For Biff.
You have to
And
bring it
I
here.
see-
Bring it to New
I
Zealand.
hope. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Everybody can go to the theater in New Zealand.
Yeah, oh, that's true. That's true. Well, you guys wanted to, if you know someone who wants to manage that, happy to connect with them. You know,
I hope we get a theatrical do-over when this is all over and we can go back to the movies, that we get to go and see everything like it was meant to be seen.
yeah, well, you know, like I say, let's talk about Winnipeg. It's supposed to open in Winnipeg but because of your COVID issues, I'm not sure. But it's supposed to open on the 30th. So, you know,
Of
just
this
keep your
month?
eyes open. Yeah, October 30th.
Amazing.
Yeah.
We'll keep an eye out for that. You
Yeah,
know,
keep your eyes open. It was going to open in Toronto, but then Toronto shut down. So it won't open until who knows in Ontario. Although it's going to show in Hamilton on November 4th, if anybody wants to. There's an independent.
people still
Ed
listen
Fuchs
to
is one of the
words.
executive producers. He has a theater down there, and he's going to be showing it there on November 4th, I think it is. Yeah, and Carla Robinson's going to be there, you know, introducing it and be the host for the night. So. Yeah,
That's
so if
awesome.
anybody wants to make it, I mean, obviously not Heather or Julie or Jason or Johnson, but if you know anybody who wants to go, maybe Nikki, if you want to drive to Hamilton.
Sure. Johnson's coming for sure. He's just going to jump on a quick flight.
Yeah.
Oh,
He
that's
just
right.
goes to the island.
Pocket
I think the
transporter.
last flights out of New Zealand are done now.
Yeah.
They shut it all down again.
Actually, I
Loretta, let
don't know.
me just second what Jason said about that essay. I mean, that whole book is just so incredibly foundational to everything that's happening today. And I assign your essay in my classes all the time.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank
Me
you.
three.
Oh, thank you.
I've got
Well, maybe you guys should send me a copy because I don't know if I have a copy anymore. I have a book, but I don't actually have a PDF of it anymore. So
I have a
if you
PDF.
one-
I can send you a PDF.
Oh, good. Okay, well,
Anyone?
thanks everybody. It was good to hear your good words and see your good
Great
energy.
chatting.
You know.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
thanks so much.
See you at
Take care.
MIT.